The engines on the island of Sodor have been working for a long time. Over the years, they continue to be really useful. They are more than just fellow workers, they are friends. If you asked Thomas who his best friend was, he would say Percy. But he would also mention his two coaches, Annie and Clarabelle. Thomas has known his two coaches for a long time. They would sing songs to each other as the trio puffed through the stations. They would laugh and tell stories during their journeys. Thomas and his coaches are practically inseparable. But one morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to the Farquhar sheds.
"Thomas, I need you to take Annie and Clarabelle to the works. They need new seats and their windows cleaned."
"But who will I use to take my passengers?" asked Thomas.
"You can use some of the old quarry trucks,"
joked Percy.
"No, that would not be suitable," laughed Sir Topham Hatt. "I'm sending you to Knapford to collect some of their coaches. After you deliver your coaches, of course."
"Yes, sir," sighed Thomas, and he puffed away to collect his coaches. When Thomas arrived at the works, he said goodbye to Annie and Clarabelle. "I hope you get fixed quickly," he said. "We do too," they replied. And after that, Thomas puffed sadly away. Thomas was still feeling down when he arrived at Knapford. "Where are my coaches?" asked Thomas to the yard manager. "They're on that siding." He pointed to some green coaches. They looked older than Annie and Clarabelle, and not as nice. Thomas began missing his two coaches even more. But he coupled up to them and puffed away. As Thomas puffed down his branch line, he continued to be miserable. He just couldn't help it. Thomas missed Annie and Clarabelle too much. "Maybe if I finish taking this train faster," he thought suddenly, "then I can get Annie and Clarabelle back sooner too." So Thomas started to speed up, but as soon as he did, there was a loud snap. Thomas had to stop. "One of the brake pipes is broken," said the driver. "Your sudden speed up must have broken it." Thomas was disappointed. "Now I'll never get Annie and Clarabelle back," he sobbed. After the long repairs, Thomas puffed on his way. When Thomas arrived at Elsbridge, he was very late indeed. "It's about time you showed up," said James unsympathetically. "I'm not in the mood for your attitude, James," snapped Thomas. James fell silent. Thomas left the station, flustered, but James couldn't tell if it was from anger or embarrassment. Later that day, Thomas returned to Elsbridge. Henry was there. "James says he's sorry," he said. "It's fine," Thomas sighed. "I've just been having a bad day. Tell him I'm sorry for snapping at him." Henry said that he would. "What's that?" he suddenly said. There, ahead on the tracks, was Percy pulling Annie and Clarabelle. Thomas's eyes lit up. "You're back!" he wept with joy. "Yes, we're back," sang Annie and Clarabelle.
"You can take Annie and Clarabelle from here if you want," said Percy. "They missed you very much."
And, for the first time all day, Thomas smiled. He coupled up with Annie and Clarabelle and set off to Knapford. The entire way, Thomas and his coaches sang songs. They told stories about their day and laughed all the way home. Edward and Henry are two engines who have lived on the island of Sodor for a long time. Henry pulls heavy freight trains, while Edward is a light mixed traffic engine. Sometimes Henry will get the chance to pull the express, and sometimes Edward would get the chance to act as a back engine. But whatever they do, they love being really useful. One afternoon, Henry was waiting at the docks. He was about to take a very long, heavy freight train. A majority of the goods were coming from the ships, and the workmen were not moving very fast. Henry was getting impatient. "Hurry up," he said. "I'm going to be behind schedule." "Not my problem," said one of the lazier workmen. "It will be if Sir Topham Hatt finds out you were the reason that I was late." That shut up the workmen real fast. But the loading was still taking forever. Henry was now really worried about running late. At last, the final truck was loaded, and the conductor blew his whistle. Henry set off with the giant freight train. Henry huffed and puffed down the line. Engines stopped at signals to watch the mighty engine speed by. The passengers on the platform stepped back as Henry's enormous train rolled through. Henry was at Wellsworth delivering his last passenger train for the day as Henry came through. "Fizzling fireboxes," he gasped. "I hope he can make it up the hill." As Edward wheezed out of the station, he could hear a man saying, "Hard to believe that old thing is still running, considering the big green engine who passed." Edward felt a little hurt, but he was used to being called old, so he would just pretend he didn't hear and return to shunting to the yards. Meanwhile, Henry had arrived at Gordon's Hill and began to climb. But while he did, the train started to feel longer and heavier than it actually was. Henry gave it all his puff, but ultimately, he came to a standstill. "Oh dear," said his driver. "We were going so nicely too." "I'll go phone for help," said the fireman. Edward was the nearest engine, so he set off to aid Henry. When Edward arrived, Henry had already been brought down to the bottom of the hill. "Hello, Henry," he tooted. "I've come to push." "Thanks, Edward," said Henry. "But I don't know how much help it's going to be. I'm already running late, and this delay is going to make me super late." "After we go over the hill," said Edward, "I'll continue pushing from behind. That way, we can make up for lost time." Henry and Edward's crew agreed, and with the blow of the conductor's whistle, Henry and Edward started puffing up the hill once again. The two engines huffed and wheezed their way up the steep climb. With every single wheel turn, the top seemed to get closer and closer, until at last they reached the top. "We did it!" gasped Henry. "Together," sighed Edward. "But now for the rest of the journey." And with that, the two engines raced down the hill and sped down the line. Edward and Henry puffed in unison as the stations and other engines flew past them. The two worked with all their strength and huffed their hardest together. At long last, the final station appeared. Henry and Edward then rolled into the station, exhausted. Sir Topham Hatt looked at the clock. 5 minutes late," he said. "But it would have been 30 if it weren't for Edward." "Oh, please," said Edward modestly. "You did all the heavy work. I was just pushing from behind." "Well, either way," said Sir Topham Hatt, "by working together, you got the job done, and you were both really useful engines." Edward and Henry smiled. One fine day, Percy was taking passengers to Dry Eye Airfield when he saw Harold looking at the sky.
"Hello, lazy wings," said Percy cheekily. "Is it too windy for you? Take my advice. Strap your arms. Get some nice rails."
But Harold paid no attention. "I see dark clouds in the distance," he said. "There's bound to be a storm by this afternoon."
"Humph," pouted Percy. "Rain. Just the kind of weather to ruin this fine day. The two of them ended up both being right. A storm did hit that afternoon, and it ruined the day indeed. Parts of the tracks became blocked by trees and large puddles. Lots of trains were delayed or even canceled, much to the passengers' dismay. But for all the trains that were canceled, there were those that had to stay on schedule, no matter what the weather. One of these trains is Percy's mail train. Percy was waiting for the mail to be loaded when Thomas came racing into the station. He and his coaches were soaked with rain. "Finally," sighed Thomas. "That was my last train. Now I can go to my nice dry shed." Percy made a face. "Oh, sorry, Percy. Didn't see you there." "Lucky for me, I get to go around the whole island," said Percy sarcastically. The last mail was put in. The conductor blew his whistle. Percy steamed out into the storm. As Percy pounded the rails, the rain fell harder than ever. He stopped at the stations, letting off some mail, and then starting again. In the distance, Percy swore that he heard thunder, and every once in a while, he would see a flash of lightning. But one came very close to the rails. It hit a power line, and just like that, the power went out. Signals and houses went dead in a flash. Percy had to stop at the nearest signal. "It doesn't say red," said his driver. "But it doesn't say green either. We'll just have to wait here till the power's back." "But the mail needs to come through," cried Percy. "The telephone lines are also down," said the conductor. "We'll just have to wait out the storm." Though that would be easier said than done. The puddles of rainwater began to look like swimming pools. It would only be a matter of time before he reached Percy and the mail. Then they heard a familiar buzzing. "It's Harold!" cried Percy, and he whistled loudly and longly. Harold heard the whistle and came down. "We need to deliver the mail," said Percy, "but we can't with the power out and the water rising. Can you please take the mail?" he asked. "Of course. Good to be of service," answered Harold. He was soon loaded up with letters and parcels. As he took to the sky, he suddenly shouted, "The tracks are clear of trains. Go to the next station. If you stay here, you're sure to drown." "Thank you, Harold," called Percy. "Watch out for lightning." And with that, the two left the signal and set off. Percy and Harold charged the storm. Water swirled around Percy's wheels, and lightning flashed around Harold. But they needed to keep going. The wind pounded at them fiercely, and it seemed impossible. Though even under all that stress, the two just kept fighting. And fighting. And fighting. Until finally, Percy reached the station. His journey was done. But he knew the struggle wasn't over. Harold still needed to do his part. He needed to deliver the rest of the mail. The next morning, the storm had passed, and Percy returned to Dryop. But he didn't see Harold in the airfield. Percy started to worry. But then came the familiar buzzing, and just like that, Harold hovered down, battered but unbeaten. "Good to see you back, Harold," said Percy. "Same to you," replied Harold. "The mails and parcels have been delivered, but it appears the storm has done a lot of damage." "Let's get to work cleaning it up," said Percy. And with that, Percy and Harold left Dryop to join the work. One morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to see James.
"I want you to take a large fuel train to Villastown," he boomed. "And once you arrive," he went on, "there will be a goods train waiting for you."
James was rather annoyed. "I want to take passengers today," he pouted. "Not a grimy fuel train to another goods train."
You want to pull my coal truss to Farquhar and then take my passengers back to Knapford? Asked Percy cheekily.
Oh, please, said James. I wouldn't go on your branch line even if it meant I could take passengers. And he puffed away crossly. But as James puffed down the line with his fuel train, he kept thinking about Percy's bargain. Maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea, he thought, if I could just find someone at Vickerstown who was willing to trade their passenger train. James got all excited and suddenly started racing along the track. Easy, boy, said his driver. No need to get fired up. But James wasn't listening, and he raced down Gordon's Hill. James soon arrived at Vickerstown. Diesel took away his fuel, and James looked around the station. He saw Hero on the other platform, so he chuffed over to him. What train you got there? Asked James. I'm taking tourists to Knapford, said Hero, and a lot of them too. I have to take a goods train back to Knapford, said James, but I would rather take passengers today. What if we switch trains? I take the tourists, and you take my goods. We're both going to Knapford anyway, he added. It will just be a change of pace. Hero thought for a moment. Oh, all right, he said finally. I suppose a quick switch-up won't be too bad. And with that, Hero puffed away to find James's goods train. Yes, said James to himself. He quickly coupled up to Hero's coaches. The conductor blew his whistle, and James started to pull. But he was quick to realize how heavy Hero's train was. He strained a little bit, but soon he got it moving out of the station. James puffed proudly down the line. It was much more fun to take tourists compared to goods. But the fun was about to be cut short. Gordon's Hill loomed before James. He started to climb, but the weight of Hero's train was becoming too great. At last, he came to a standstill. Ah, man, wheezed James exhaustedly. Suddenly, he heard a familiar whistle. Hero came around the bend and started climbing the hill. James looked back, but he was very confused. Is that my goods train? He asked. It seems rather small. That's because it is, said Hero. It's some supplies for Knapford Station. It's supposed to be very important, he added. I'm surprised you didn't want to take it. James began to feel silly. Well, I didn't know I was going to be taking that. I wouldn't have tried to switch trains with you if I did. We're still going to Knapford, said Hero. You want to switch trains again? James agreed. The two backed their trains down the hill, returned their trains to each other, and then set off once again. Eventually, James and Hero arrived at Knapford side by side. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting.
Right on time, he said, despite James's switcheroo.
James was surprised.
How did you... James, did you really think you could swap trains without me knowing? I'm the controller. The yard managers let me know of these sort of things.
James gulped.
But no harm done, I suppose, finished Sir Topham Hatt. Both trains are here, and you've both proven yourself as useful as ever.
Thank you, sir, said Hero and James. And with that, the two returned to work. Thomas was having problems with his tubes, so he had to be sent to the works to be mended. An engine needed to fill Thomas's spot, so Sir Topham Hatt brought Rosie to the Farquhar branch line. She quickly proved herself to be a really hard worker and a great Thomas substitute. One morning, the engines were in their sheds. Rosie sighed. "It's such a lovely spring morning," she said. "The air is crisp and the birds are chirping.
I can't wait for all the animals to come out, said Percy. Old Toby was the only one who didn't seem happy. This time of year, he said, the rabbits start popping out. They can be very troublesome sometimes. Troublesome? Said Rosie. How can those cute little things be troublesome? You'd be surprised, said Toby, of all the things I've seen in my years. And all the things you wish you hadn't, teased Percy. Anyways, said Rosie, I have a passenger train to take, and I'll try not to have rabbits bother me. And with that, she left the sheds. As Rosie puffed down the branch line, she saw all the leaves on the trees growing once again. She could see some deer frolicking in the fields. But what she didn't see was a rabbit digging a hole near the tracks. It was causing the rails to bend. And before Rosie knew it, it was too late. Bust my buffers, she cried. What happened? But she soon found out when the rabbit hopped away frightened. Oh, Toby was right, she sighed. Rabbits can be troublesome. But soon Harvey arrived with some workmen, and they got to work mending the tracks. Rosie wasn't damaged, so she went on her way. And by the time she returned, the tracks were mended. Rosie was pleased. But later that afternoon, Rosie saw something dart in front of her. Oh, it's that troublesome rabbit again, she said. Suddenly, the rabbit stopped in the middle of the tracks. Whoa! Cried Rosie, and she slammed on her brakes. What were you thinking? She said angrily, hopping into the middle of the tracks. But then, Rosie noticed something red around the rabbit's neck. That looks like a collar, she said. Oh, you must be lost. She now felt sorry for scolding it. Your owner must be worried sick. I'll take you to the net station. Here, hop in my cab. But the rabbit didn't hop into her cab. It instead hopped onto her footplate. That worked too, I guess. And Rosie set off with her new friend. They soon arrived at the station. Maya! Shouted a little girl. You brought her back. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Rosie. Rosie blushed, but she was happy for that little girl. A few days later, Thomas returned. Well, Rosie, said Sir Topham Hatt, you have proven yourself really useful here. Would you like to work here more often? Yes, please, sir, said Rosie. So now, every once in a while, Rosie gets to return to the branch line to help out. And if she's lucky, she gets the chance to see that little girl with Maya and her new rabbit Rosie, named after the engine.
Toby is an old engine. He has worked on railways for many years and shows no sign of stopping. But one day, Toby wasn't feeling too great. Maybe it's boiler ache, said Percy. It's not boiler ache, said Toby. I just feel a sharp pain in my side. Maybe you're getting old, teased Thomas. Maybe when you go out today, you'll burst and we'll have to rescue you. Huh, what a thought, said Toby, and with that he left the sheds. Toby isn't like the other engines on Sodor. While most of the engines are made of metal, Toby is made out of wood. And wood can decay faster than metal. Every day, Toby would take some light passenger trains on Henrietta or help shun in the Farquhar quarry. But today, Toby was to take some holiday makers up to the castle. But on his way up, Toby continued to feel his pain. I don't want to let my passengers down, he told himself, so he continued on, trying to ignore his pain. They eventually arrived at the castle, and the holiday makers enjoyed themselves immensely. But Toby didn't. He still continued to hurt. "Maybe I should go to the steamworks after this train," he said. By now, it was late afternoon, and the holiday makers returned to Henrietta. Once everyone was in, Toby set back down the tracks. Toby's pain was reaching unbearable levels as he passed through the closing stations. But suddenly, there was a loud snap. "Ow!" cried Toby. A pillar of smoke was shooting out of Toby's side. His driver looked him over. "One of your wood planks has snapped. It appears to be rotten, and it jammed in your boiler, which explains the steam. I can push it back into place, but I can't make it stick." Toby was feeling hopeless. But then the conductor shouted, "I have an idea. I'm going to run back to the station. Stay there." "That's all I can do," moaned Toby. The conductor returned with a bottle of glue that he had bought from the station. "You have got to be kidding me," said Toby's driver. "Not at all," said the conductor. "One of the workers up in Arsdale told me about this. It's bound to work." Toby's driver sighed, but he put some glue on the plank and pushed on it for a couple minutes. Sure enough, when you let go, it stuck. "It'll have to do," he said. "How are you feeling, Toby?" "Better," he replied. "Do you think you can get them to Knapford?" "I'll try," said Toby. Toby started once again. While the glue was working, the pain wasn't gone. But Toby didn't care. He knew that he had to make it now or never. He huffed and puffed and puffed and huffed his hardest. Until finally, Knapford was in view. "Well done, Toby," cheered his driver. "Yes, well done, Toby," echoed some of the passengers. Toby felt very proud. The next day, Toby was sent to the works to be mended, and while he was gone, Rosie helped out with his work. And all three of the tank engines agreed that old Toby was an engine to respect.
Ah! Oh, on, faster, faster. I don't want to go faster. Ah! Harvey is one of the strangest looking engines on Sodor. He has a crane on top of his boiler, but that makes him really useful, especially if there's a crash. "Grind my gears," said Harvey. "Are you all right, Percy?" "Yeah, I'm fine." Harvey looked concerned. "Oh dear, this is a big mess, and we're on the main line. I don't think I can do it on my own. I'm gonna go get a crane." "Okay," said Percy, "but please hurry." And Harvey chuffed back to the station to get another crane. Neither engines could have seen what was coming next, but it would soon have catastrophic consequences. Harvey returned with another crane to find Gordon.
"Oh, the indignity," groaned Gordon.
"Oh no, now we have a bigger mess. Let's have this crane start working, but I will need another crane."
"Harvey's at the other station.
"Maybe you can—" "Yes, I'll go get Rocky," said Harvey. And with that, Harvey left for the other station. But as soon as he was out of sight, Harvey and Rocky arrived at the crash when, "James!" "I ran to this train," said James, "and now my buffers are ruined." "Okay, this is getting out of hand," said Harvey. "I'm going to try to find one more crane, but after that, I'm done." And Harvey left the crash site for the third time.
"I swear, if another engine comes..."
"It's Thomas! Stop, Thomas, stop!" "What is all that noise about? Oh my goodness!" Harvey came with Jerome when, "Thomas, cinders and ashes. It's a good thing I didn't crash." "All right," said Harvey. "I've done enough stalling. It's time to clear up this mess. Let's do this." And for the rest of the day, Harvey and the cranes worked and worked and worked. Their arms ached and their hooks hurt. But they kept at it. Until finally, the tracks were cleared. "Thank you, Harvey," said Percy.
"Thank you, Rocky,"
said Gordon. "Thank you, Jerome," said James. "Thank you, Mr. Crane," said Thomas. "I probably should have dealt with Percy's crash before it turned into a big one," said Harvey. "Maybe you should have," said Jerome. "But you've still proven yourself really useful," said Rocky. That made Harvey very happy and everyone else very proud. Bear is one of the diesel engines on the island of Sodor. He works on the main line, pulling goods and passengers up and down the line. When Bear works, his engine makes a growling sound. It's actually the reason he got his name. Bear likes his name, but sometimes he feels self-conscious about his growling. "Don't worry about it," said Henry. "Everyone has insecurities." "Like what?" asked Bear. "Well, James is always worried about his paint, and Gordon is always concerned about his reputation." "What about you?" asked Bear. "Well, I worry about failure. I have a history of problems, and I worry that one day I will fail for good and no longer be useful." "I know you will always find a way to be useful," said Bear, feeling a bit better. That made Henry feel better too. And the two engines fell asleep. The next day, Bear came to Knapford for his morning passenger train. The people on the platform were talking excitedly. They were going to the circus that was opening today. The passengers were soon all on board, and with the blow of a whistle, Bear set off. The circus was to take place at Kildane, so whenever Bear stopped at any other station, very few passengers would get off, but plenty would get on. The coaches were soon starting to get packed. Eventually, when Bear reached Wellsworth, extra coaches had to be attached to the train. "Great. Now even more people will get to hear my growling," thought Bear to himself. As he waited, Bear overheard the station master and his driver talking. "I just received a phone call from the circus," he said. "Their bear apparently got loose and ran away." "Well, we'll keep an eye out for it," said Bear's driver. But Bear personally hoped that they wouldn't find the bear. As Bear came to Gordon's Hill and began to climb, he could hear his engine growling loudly. "Is that the bear?" shouted one of the passengers. "No, you idiot," said another passenger. "That's the diesel." Bear tried to ignore their words, but it wasn't easy. Eventually he came to the top of the hill, and as he raced down the other side, his engine stopped growling. Bear was relieved. But as he stopped at the signal, he began to hear growling. "Oh no," he thought, "not more growling." But he soon realized that the growl wasn't coming from his engine. Bear looked around, and he saw what appeared to be a brown fuzzy bush.
and when it moved a little closer, Bear knew exactly what it was. "Well, we found the circus's bear," said Bear quietly. "But how do we get it to the next station? We can't keep it in the coaches." "Well, I'll call the station master at Marin," said Bear's driver. "Maybe we can come up with an idea by then." So Bear's driver went into the signal box. As the driver closed the door, Bear's engine started to growl again, and just like that, the bear started to move closer. "That's it," Bear thought. "I can use my growl to guide the bear to the station." Bear's driver came out, though he was very quick to jump back into Bear. "Let's go slowly," said Bear, "and then let the bear follow my growling." "Good idea," said his driver. "Now, can we please go before he gets us?" So Bear rolled slowly forward, and the circus bear followed at a distance. Bear soon arrived at Marin. The circus people were already there, ready to collect the bear. "Thank you, Bear," said the ringmaster, "you and your spectacular growl." Every passenger on the train cheered, and for the first time, Bear was proud of his growl. As Bear returned that night, the engines could talk of nothing but of Bear and his spectacular growl. "It's nice," he told Henry, "to prove that something you thought was silly turned out to be useful." Henry couldn't agree more. One day, the station master came into Sir Topham Hatt's office, but he was surprised to see Sir Topham Hatt in his holiday clothes. "Are you going somewhere, sir?"
Yes, indeed. Today, I am going to be riding in my own trains to get a better understanding of what it is like to be a passenger.
"So, in other words, you're spending a day in the passenger's shoes?"
Yes, basically. And don't worry, Mr. Percival will be taking care of things while I'm on my day off.
And with that, Sir Topham Hatt exited the office. As he waited on the platform, Sir Topham Hatt began to observe.
"Well, everyone seems cheery this morning."
Mommy, look, it's Thomas." "Yes, it is, but we are not riding Thomas today. We are riding an Emily." "Aww."
Thomas has always been a favorite among children.
Everyone climbed into the coaches, and as the whistle blew, Emily set off.
These coaches have been in use for many years," said Sir Topham Hatt. "But I think they're starting to show their age. Not as comfortable as the Express, but Emily is sure given a splendid ride."
When Emily arrived at the station, Sir Topham Hatt got off.
"Well, let's have a look around the station, shall we? Oh, I don't think I've seen him around before."
Ah, Sodor is such a beautiful place. I might consider moving here. What do you think of that, Bernie? Bernie? Wow, overreacting much? Oh God, I am so sorry. No, it's fine. Bailey just hates animals. I'm Leah. Owen, pleasure to meet you. And this is Bernie. Aw, she's cute.
Yes, Bernie is very cute. What's that over there?
Wouldn't it be funny if we sprayed the F word on the building? Yes!
Uh-oh, I should report this to the station master.
Sir? Shh! I'm undercover. Oh, sorry. I wanted to get an idea of what it is like to be a passenger on my railway. I see. Has it been fun?
So far. But anyway, I saw 2 delinquents talking about vandalizing the station.
Uh-oh, I guess I'll go check on them. Thanks for letting me know. Excuse me, boys. What do you think you're doing?
What?
I'm going to have to confiscate that spray can if you don't want me to call the cops.
All right, jeez, we were just joking around.
Thank you, you two. Now go about your day.
Well, that's good that mess was dealt with. Here's James! Ah, that was loud. I've got to get on James's case for that.
Sir Topham Hatt and a few other passengers climbed aboard, and soon James left the station.
Well, the seats are more comfortable, Sir Topham Hatt said, but it's hard to enjoy with James bouncing around.
When James came to a stop at the junction, Sir Topham Hatt got out.
I think this will be my last train for the day. Now, the engine who should be pulling it today would be... Thomas.
Hello, sir. I didn't expect to see you here.
Yes, I'm taking a day in the passenger's shoes to get a feel of what it's like.
I see. Well, I'll be sure to give you a wonderful ride.
Thank you, Thomas.
Sir Topham Hatt climbed into Annie, and with a blow of the conductor's whistle, Thomas set down the line.
I must say, Annie and Clarabelle are wonderfully great coaches. Thomas isn't as bumpy as James is. This might be my favorite ride today. Thank you for the ride, Thomas. But for now, I think I need a break from riding around in trains.
Of course, sir. And with that, Thomas left the final station. It was Christmas time on the island of Sodor. Snow covered the hills, but luckily, ice didn't cover the tracks. The island can be quite beautiful during the winter, and there is no place more beautiful than Henry's Forest. At least, that's what Henry says. Every December, Henry would spend some time in the forest watching the children play in the snow and the deer prance through the trees. If you thought Henry's Forest was already peaceful, wait till you see it during winter. Unfortunately, the Christmas season is very busy. Henry hasn't the time to stop in the forest. He was always busy pulling passengers or freight. And now it was a couple days before Christmas, and Henry still hadn't got the chance to stop in the forest. He was taking a large freight train to Brendam Docks. When he arrived, Salty was there.
Ahoy there, Henry, he said. You don't seem as cheery as usual.
Well, it's just, I haven't had the chance to visit my forest. All these trains wear an engine out.
Aye, me hearty. The docks have been busier than ever. So many gifts and packages to unload and send off. We haven't the time to put any decorations.
I'm going to be taking decorations to Knapford. That's where we're going to have our Christmas.
All right, Henry, that's the last of them, said Cranky. Now be off.
Henry laughed. I guess Cranky isn't in the Christmas spirit.
Laughed Salty. See you around, Henry.
You too, Salty.
You know, Salty, said Cranky, the reason why I'm particularly cranky is because I don't have any decorations. I see what you mean, me hearty, said Salty. Christmas decorations can really put someone in a good mood. That's it! What's what? I know how to cheer Henry up. We'll have the Christmas party take place in his forest. That plan is ridiculous, said Cranky. Sir Topham Hatt would never approve. Do you even know Sir Topham Hatt? He surely will approve, me hearty.
Wait, before you ask him, just don't take any of my decorations.
Don't worry, Cranky, I won't.
And with that, Salty told the dock manager of his idea, who then telephoned Sir Topham Hatt, who then agreed to it immediately.
Why don't we make it a surprise for Henry, he said. I'll have all the other engines do his work for a while, so that way he won't be spoiled.
And he did. Henry stayed in the sheds for a while, wondering if he had done something wrong. Meanwhile, the other engines were hard at work reorganizing the party. It was around 5 p.m. when Henry saw a familiar face. Salty? What are you doing here?
Come with me, me hearty. There is something I have to show you.
And from there,
Salty and Henry left the sheds. It took a while to get to Henry's forest. A light snow started to fall, but nothing too crazy. Nothing like the storm Dorn had to deal with last year. And once the two inches arrived, Henry was met with his surprise. Whoa! The trees were lit up with twinkling lights and tinsel. All the engines were wearing Santa hats. Sir Topham Hatt and several other people stood proudly before Henry.
Ladies, gentlemen, and engines, I want to give a special thank you to Salty for coming up with this idea and making it possible. And with that being said, let the festivities begin!
Everyone cheered, and Henry couldn't be happier. A few hours had passed, and most of the partygoers had gone home. Henry and Salty were still there, though, enjoying the peacefulness of the forest. "Thank you, Salty," said Henry. "This was a wonderful idea."
You're welcome, me hearty. Ah, the forest is truly beautiful in the Christmas snow, is it not?
"It is," said Henry. "It most certainly is." As the two engines grew more tired by the minute, they could hear some deer prancing in the distance, and in that very moment, Henry and Salty knew that they were at peace in this forest's Christmas. One day, Rheneas was puffing down the line. He had a large train of goods that he was taking to the mountain village. But when Rheneas started the ascent to the station, he heard a loud burst. "Ow!" he cried. Steam billowed everywhere. "You burst your safety valve, Rheneas," said his driver. "This train was too much of a strain. We can't pull it any further." "But we need to deliver these goods to the village," said Rheneas. "We'll just have to wait for another engine to pass," said his driver. "Then hopefully we can get some help from them." So for the next hour or so, Rheneas and his driver waited for another train to show up. Suddenly, Rheneas saw Sir Handel coming down the hill. "Sir Handel," whistled Rheneas, "can you please help me? My safety valve burst, and I need someone to take this train to the village." "I can't help," said Sir Handel. "I have to take these passengers to Croven's Gate, or they'll miss their connection." And Sir Handel raced away. Bother! So for another hour or so, Rheneas and his driver waited for another train to show up. Suddenly, Rheneas saw Peter Sam coming down the hill. "Peter Sam," whistled Rheneas, "please, can you help me? My safety valve burst and I need someone to take this train to the village." "I'm sorry," said Peter Sam, "but I can't help you. I'm already running late with my farmer's train and they need to get to the market." And Peter Sam continued down the hill. Double bother. So for another hour or so, Rheneas and his driver waited for another train to show up. Suddenly, Rheneas saw Starlowy coming down the hill. "Starlowy," whistled Rheneas, "please, can you help me? My safety valve burst and I need—" "Your safety valve burst?" Yes. It had for the past 3 hours, and during that time I've been waiting for an engine to take this train up to the mountain village for me." "Well, you don't need to wait any longer," said Starlowy. "I am always happy to help a friend in need." "Thank you, Starlowy," sighed Rheneas. "I was worried I'd have to say triple bother." Starlowy laughed. From there, Rheneas was left on a siding at the bottom of the hill, and Starlowy backed down onto the train. "Be careful, Starlowy," said Rheneas. "Don't break down yourself." "I won't," said Starlowy. "I can make to the top. I know I can." And with that, Starlowy started up the hill. The train was much heavier than Starlowy thought. "I can see why Rheneas broke down, but I can manage. I know I can do it." But the further Starlowy went up, the less likely it seemed. Rheneas began to worry. "I can do it, I can do it, I can do it," Starlowy chanted himself. "I can do it, I can do it, I can... I've done it! Phew!" Rheneas whistled in delight, and Starlowy was very proud. Starlowy took the train of goods to the mountain village station. Then he raced down back the hill to find Rheneas. "I knew I could do it! I knew I could do it!" Starlowy cheered. "I knew you could do it! I knew you could do it!" echoed Rheneas. "Come on, Rheneas," said Starlowy. "Let's get you back to Crovin's Gate so you can get repaired at the steamworks." "Sounds good to me," said Rheneas. And with that, the two old friends headed for home. One morning, Sir Handel and Peter Sam were in a heated debate. Trucks have no roofs, so if Ada, Jane, and Mabel have no roofs, they are trucks. But they have seats. Coaches have seats. So if Ada, Jane, and Mabel have seats, they are coaches. What do you think, Starlowy? "Oh, I know better to get into these debates," said Starlowy, "especially this early in the morning." "Well, whatever," said Sir Handel. "Anyway, I have to take my morning passenger train, with proper coaches that have roofs." And Sir Handel steamed away. Starlowy sighed. "That engine never seems to learn any sense," he said. "Every time we try, it doesn't seem to stick." "I am his best friend," said Peter Sam, "but even I can't truly understand him." "I do have an idea," said Starlowy. "We can do it later." He explained his plan to Peter Sam. "That kind of sounds more like a prank to me," said Peter Sam. "Let's do it." And they did, after talking with Sir Topham Hatt, of course. Sir Handel was due for another passenger train, and Peter Sam had to take a goods train. Peter Sam had asked Sir Topham Hatt to switch trains with Sir Handel, but he wasn't going to tell Sir Handel about it. So that way, he said, when he pulls a train with two vans in front, he will think he's pulling coaches. And once he realizes he's pulling trucks, it'll be too late. Sir Handel puffed in Crovin's Gate. He was about to fetch his next line of coaches when Starlowy quickly said, "Don't worry, Sir Handel. I'll go get your coaches for you. You want them with roofs, right?" "Yes, don't give me any of those truck wannabes." Sir Handel waited for a bit, and then he felt a bump. Sir Handel quickly glanced up and back. He saw two tall roofs right behind him, and Starlowy behind a brake van in the way back. "Thanks," he said. "No problem," said Starlowy, and with a blow of the conductor's whistle, Sir Handel set off with his goods train that he thought was a passenger train. Sir Handel puffed down the line. The train was a little heavier than he thought, but he didn't seem to mind too much. For all Sir Handel knew, he was taking a large tourist train, and he never once decided to look back at what he was pulling. He arrived at the first station and came to a stop. "What are you doing, Sir Handel?" asked his driver. "This isn't time to rest." "What do you think I'm doing?" said Sir Handel. "I'm letting off passengers." "What passengers? We're taking a goods train." Sir Handel took a good look behind him. "What?" he cried. "Why am I taking goods? I'm supposed to be taking passengers." "It's not a big deal, Sir Handel," said his driver. "Let's just get going." "No, I won't. I refuse to take trucks that I wasn't supposed to take." "Wait, Starlowy was supposed to give me my coaches. Why didn't he—" Just then, he heard a whistle from behind. "That sounds like Peter Sam." Peter Sam puffed in with some coaches. You and Starlowy tricked me, didn't you? Hey, I just wanted to switch trains. You're the one complaining. You always complain. If anything, you deserve this." Peter Sam started to leave. "Oh yeah? If I deserve this for complaining, then you deserve this." Sir Handel had bashed into Peter Sam's train. "What are you doing, you maniac?" Oh no. The crash had injured several passengers and had blocked the station from anyone getting through. Sir Handel had realized his mistake. It took a long time for the scene to be cleaned up. Once it finally was, Sir Handel, Starlowy, and Peter Sam returned home. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting. "Words cannot describe how furious I am. Peter Sam, you purposely neglected to tell Sir Handel about the change of plans,
Starlowy, you purposely lied to Sir Handel about what he was pulling. But Sir Handel, you purposely crashed into Peter Sam's train and caused damage and delay. I would make this punishment equal, but Sir Handel, it is clear to me that this temperamental behavior of yours has not changed and probably never will. So I am sending you away to work in the quarry alone. It will give you some time to think about everything you have done.
Yes, sir. Sir Handel puffed away.
As for you two, said Sir Topham Hatt, you will stay in the sheds until further notice. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, sir, said Starlowy Peter Sam. And with that, Sir Topham Hatt was satisfied and left the sheds. It took a couple of weeks for Starlowy and Peter Sam to start working again, but it took much longer for Sir Handel to return. When Sir Handel did finally return, Starlowy and Peter Sam were worried. They were worried that Sir Handel might not accept their apology, but to both of their surprises, Sir Handel apologized first. He apologized for everything that he had done in the past and for how mean he was. Starlowy and Peter Sam were shocked, but they happily accepted his apology and apologized themselves. It was clear that Sir Handel finally had changed for the better, and to think that it all started with a little argument about coaches and trucks. One afternoon, Duncan was taking some passengers to the Elephant Park. He had just turned onto the track to the park. As he went along, though, he noticed something about the tracks. They were a lot bumpier than usual. "Easy there, Duncan," said his driver. "No need to rock and roll." "It's not me. It's these tracks. They're so..." Duncan had derailed. "What the heck was that?" "There appears to be a large crack in the track." And actually, he looked behind him. There were several cracks and bumps along the rails. "What did I say? I told you it wasn't me bouncing." Later that night, Duncan was complaining to the others. "Those tracks are never kept up. Why do we even have so many trains going to Elephant Park? Why does Mr. Percival bother keeping that line open?" "It's a nice tourist spot," said Starlowy, "and it's good for a couple of laughs." "Laughs?" asked Duncan. But then he remembered the elephant statue in the water, and how that got there because of his mistake. "Oh, don't remind me of that. I hate having to look at that stupid statue every time I take a train there." "Oh, I know you do." But before Duncan could tear into Starlowy, Rusty came up. "We inspected the tracks to Elephant Park. They aren't safe at all, and they'll need to be taken out." "They'll be replaced with new ones, though, right?" asked Starlowy. "I'm not sure. There might not be enough traffic to warrant getting new tracks." "Well, that's fine with me," said Duncan. "One less job for me means more time to rest. I never get rest." And just like that, Duncan puffed away to find somewhere to sleep. Unfortunately, Rusty turned out to be right. The railway ended up closing the line to Elephant Park. All the engines were sad that that part of the line was closed. Even Duncan was sad, but he didn't want to admit it. One day, he was puffing to what used to be the fort of the park. Rusty was there with some workers in cement. "What's going on here?" asked Duncan. "We're building a trail to Elephant Park," replied Rusty. "There's still plenty of people who want to visit the park, so Mr. Percival thought of making use of the old track beds as hiking and biking trails. It's rails to trails, he says." "Huh," grunted Duncan. "Well, we'll see how that turns out. Can't wait to have to pull more trains again." And with that, Duncan left the worksite. It took a couple of weeks to complete the trail, but at last it was complete with some new rails to drop off the passengers at the trailhead. And Duncan was to take the first train to the trailhead. "Woo-hoo, I'm so excited," said Duncan sarcastically. "Oh, come on, Duncan," said his driver. "At least you don't have to look at the elephant in the lake every time you take this train." "Huh, that's true, I guess." Duncan set off with his train. When he reached the trailhead, he came to a stop. Hikers and tourists climbed out. They all talked excitedly and happily, and it even started to wear off on Duncan. And when Duncan left the trailhead, he was happier than he had been in a long time. That night in the sheds, Duncan returned to find Rusty and Starlowy. "You know," he said, "I think it was for the best that the old rails to Elephant Path ended up becoming a trail. People seem to be having fun, and are going to enjoy visiting the old station and the elephant in the lake." "I'm glad to see you're happy about it, Duncan," said Rusty. "Are you sure this is even Duncan talking?" teased Starlowy. "I've never seen Duncan so happy about Elephant Park before." "Don't push your luck," snapped Duncan. Starlowy laughed. Then Rusty laughed. And finally, Duncan laughed. And they laughed all night long.